So hello everyone. So today's Microtalk presentation is about the marine heat waves. So we all know about the atmospheric heat waves and what are the health impacts of the atmospheric heat waves and how it is going to affect the productivity of the labor force, especially during the summer, and it actually impacts the economy of the nation. So then you can see here in the figure that how the heat waves are spatially distributed throughout the world, so throughout the world in different countries. And here is another example figure of the heat waves over India. And the impacts of the heat waves we all witness during the summer, and we have faced it. And in news also, a lot of articles come out the impacts and how to prevent from the heat waves during the summer. Now the question arises: does the heat waves also occurs in the oceans? If they occur in the ocean, then how are we going to define the heat waves in oceans? And what are the causes of heat waves in oceans? And what are the impacts of the marine heat waves in impacts of the marine heat wave or the marine ecosystem? All of these questions we will explore throughout the presentation. So first we will define the marine heat waves. Here in this figure, if we can look, there's the blue line that actually shows the climatological mean of the sea surface temperature. And this green line basically shows the 90th percentile threshold, and any event that is above this threshold. The threshold is basically different papers define the threshold differently. Sometimes they define it 90th percentile, sometimes 99, 95. That's a very, based on the region also. So now, any event above this threshold is called an extreme event. So if the extreme events, if the sea surface temperature basically remains higher than the 90th percentile threshold for successively at minimum 5 days, then we call it as a heat wave. Otherwise, if it's for a 1 day or 2 day, then we call it just as a heat spikes. And if another event will start and it will start just 1 day after this heat wave will end, then we call it as it's a part of the previous heat wave as well. Now, each heat wave has its own properties. That is the duration, that is the starting as well as the end point, end day of the heat wave. Then the intensity, how high the temperature is, either from this the average value, the long-term climatological mean value, or from the 90th percentile threshold. That's called the basically intensity. Then we see as a cumulative intensity. Okay, during this duration, how the sea surface temperature is changing during the duration of the heat wave. And also a few things that we need to consider when we go, and study the particular ocean, like in terms of heat waves, and then we see the annual frequency. There's a number of heat waves in a particular year. Also, number of days in a year that were a part of a marine heat wave, then we call it annual marine heat wave days. Now, what are the causes of the marine heat waves? So marine heat waves are basically caused by the ocean currents. Ocean current is basically pile up the warm water at a particular area that brings the heat waves. And then the warm atmosphere basically transfers the heat towards the sea surface, oceans. Then it increase the temperature of the sea surface that brings causes the marine heat wave. Also, the winds can either suppress or they can actually promote the heat wave event. In literature, they have also mentioned that few climatological modes we call El Nino, Indian Ocean Dipole, and the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, they are also responsible for the heat waves in the past. Now, why are these heat waves? So heat waves are basically in every ocean. And these are some of the major events basically. In 2003, the Mediterranean Sea, where the temperature was 4 degrees Celsius above than the average, and the duration was 30 days. Similarly, this is one of the biggest event considered in the marine heat waves. It remains for 22 2,026 days, and the temperature was 2.5 degrees Celsius above the normal. And this leads to a lot of marine, ecosystem disturbance, and also it leads to the economic instability in different in two countries, USA and Canada. Also, we can see similar in 2011, Western Australia also, faced the marine heat wave where the temperature was 3 degrees Celsius above, and the duration was 60 degrees. And currently, one paper come out in just 2 weeks before about the Indian Oceans, that from the Roxy, he's from Indian Meteorological Department, Pune, where they mentioned that in the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea, the heat waves are basically increasing. There is an increasing trend in the number of heat waves. And they have also mentioned the impacts of these heat waves on the marine ecosystem. So what are the impacts and the implications of the marine heat waves? The marine heat waves can actually affect the ecosystem structure by they can support the certain species to grow up and certain species suppress it. And also the biodiversity gets drastically affected by the marine heat waves, like the bleaching of the coral, the symbiotic association between the zooplankton and phytoplankton gets disturbed, and death of the sea creatures. It leads to the economic losses in different countries, like in different sectors, basically, whether it's a fisheries, it's an aquaculture, it's an ecotourism. There's one study also which mentions that the marine heat wave in British Columbia in 2021 July leads to a death of more than 1 billion seashore animals. And these are the two pictures from the British Columbia, where the mussels and other marine life, and these are dead mussels from the same coast. Now, if we can see now the temperature of the sea is warming, how the marine life is, reacting to it. So marine ecosystem has one cooling range. So if the temperature will fluctuate in this range, so they can sustain to it. In fact, if the temperature will fluctuate more in a range, then they can adopt it to some extent. But beyond that particular range, the ecosystem, marine ecosystem, is under vulnerable condition. So also, from the IPCC report that they mentioned that the global ocean temperature will increase during the 21st century. And by the end of the 21st century, the top 2,000 meters of the ocean, the temperature will be 5 to 7 times higher when we use one scenario, the business as usual scenario. So hence the warming of the ocean increases the likelihood of the marine heat waves in the future. If the marine heat waves will increase, then it will be a drastic impact on the marine life. So the conclusion of this topic is that marine heat waves are basically the anomalous sea surface temperature, and that remains for at least 5 days consecutive. They can go beyond that, but if that's less than this threshold, that we didn't consider it as a heat wave. So marine heat waves can occur in everywhere in the ocean. And recently we got a news that the North and the South poles also faced the heat waves in the last week. Then the marine heat waves occur due to the ocean currents, winds, and then different climatological modes. There's the El Nino, Indian Ocean dipole, and marine heat waves can basically affect the marine ecosystem and lead us to the bleaching of corals, death of sea creatures. And the marine heat waves will increase in the future by warming of oceans. So these are the references that I used to explain the concept. And these are the references for the figure that I used throughout the presentation. Thank you.